Hello, and on this episode of Beyond Entertainment, we are talking to Matt from HEAR360. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So, HEAR360, tell us about HEAR360. Tell us about your history.
So, HEAR360, we started as an immersive audio solutions company back in 2016, but it was actually a culmination of years of working in the music business and the audio and sound business in general. I moved to Los Angeles in the late 90s. I started working in the major music studios, just starting off as an assistant engineer, working on a lot of amazing albums with great talent, great producers. Worked my way up, the chain until I was, a lead engineer on projects. So I had the opportunity to work with a lot of great artists. I started as a chief engineer, lead engineer for Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. So
cool.
I worked with them for years, which was fantastic. We got to work on all the great Janet Jackson records and Mary J. Blige, Usher, Shaka Khan. We had a lot of fun. A lot of R&B records, a lot of rock and roll records. But what happened is my business partner, Greg Morgenstein, we worked together on a lot of projects, and we were kind of always thinking about product ideas. And at a certain point, we started consulting for various consumer electronics companies, and leveraging or lending our audio expertise, in terms of product development. So they would send us their products, we would evaluate the products, we would maybe, apply our tuning curves. We'd work with their development engineers to come up with, let's say, enhanced solutions or solutions that were at least had a contribution from, let's say, a real world engineering community. And then finally, we decided to launch our own company, and that's where HEAR360 comes in.
So software and hardware modifications?
Software and hardware. To start, we launched around the first virtual reality boom. So when Oculus hopped on Kickstarter and first got purchased by Facebook, we decided, hey, let's come out with an audio equivalent, because everybody's working on visuals, everybody's working on picture, but nobody's paying attention to sound. So we had some great ideas. We had some multi-channel microphone concepts and some spatial audio software concepts. And we thought, well, this would be great to come out with a solution that could capture head trackable 360 sound that can move with the picture, so that you could, finish the immersive equation, right? And that's how we launched HEAR360.
We're seeing this more and more now, this interplay of the sound and the video coming in, especially as Apple's come into the industry with its spatial audio features. So is this the way the business is going, this tracking technology, so you feel you're part of a video?
Yeah, and that's what we see. And like I said, back then it was kind of like everybody was focused on the image only. So you'd put a headset on and you'd watch a 360 video, but the sound would be static, right? And so through the evolution of that process, people realized that you needed the sound equation to finish it up. And companies like Apple, we have to thank, because they're kind of paving the way. They realized this too. And that educational process and making that available for augmented reality and for music is really increasing and raising the consumer expectation of, how you can actually hear high quality audio.
Yeah, we're seeing this more and more now ourselves, that, the screen technology has gotten better and better in the home theater space.
Sure.
And maybe in the late 90s, certainly in the 2000s, Bose were kind of leading the way somewhat in excellent home theater sound and audio,
Sure.
and they upped the game. But I have to say, you're seeing it much more in cell phones, tablets, etc. And obviously, we're now trying to bring this into the cabin in in-flight entertainment. What are the challenges that go along with that? We're in a constrained space. We have to rely on headphones. How does that work with HEAR360?
Yeah, and actually, just to touch on your point really quickly, I mean, this isn't the first, time that surround sound has been approached, right? It's like we all know. I mean, quad was a format for music that came out in the 70s, and it failed because, unfortunately,
I still have my War of the Worlds album in Quadraphonic.
There you go. I've got a Doors quad album that's never been open, right? The problem is you had to have a turntable that had the decoder, and the decoding and the signal to noise ratio was pretty bad on it, and people didn't set it up right, and they didn't have the space. So that's why I think your point about we're seeing this a lot in terms of the personal audio experience, personal mobile phones, headphones. That's important because the fact that we can actually deploy software on a device and do this on headphones is amazing. Now you don't have to set up the speakers, right? And so we've proven that people don't typically take the time to set the speakers up right, but if it's set up for them, they can have the experience. Now this is new. This is something that we could never have done in the past with the old technology.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking beforehand, and I've been into audio for over 30 years, and speaker technology, headphone technology is just light years ahead of where it was, and you're able to take advantage of that these days much better.
That's right. And it sounds funny because you probably ask about spatial audio, like how do we do it over two headphones, right? It's like if you need, many different speakers in a room to do it, how do you do that? Well, we hear with two ears, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have two ears to hear with. So it's really about having these complex filters that simulate and emulate that. So we can virtualize the speaker system. And all this incredible DSP allows us to do that, and allows us to process in real time like we could never do before. And you can tune and correct frequency response like you never could do before.
It's the swinging of the bass that's when you capture that. I was a sound engineer for a very long time, and I was really lazy. I did almost everything in mono. I can admit that these days, but when I was doing live sound, I was panicked to mono because it sounded easier. But when you can sweep the bass, it just sounds so good. The demo of your system, I was just blown away.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, when you were doing live, I think I remember a lot of engineers would go mono, right? Because it actually, when you're talking about audience coverage, right?
Yeah, that was it.
It was actually a way to make sure that everybody heard the same balance too, right?
That's right. And the lazy engineers they thought they were being technical because they would want left and right to sound different. But then you have to realize that the audience, if they're standing on the left, they can't hear the right. So it would just bring it all back to center.
Yeah. And so the fact that we have this landscape now where we have personal sound, right? And you have all this creative space you can take advantage of is truly fantastic. And that's what we're doing for the airplane now, right? So,
are you seeing the studios focus more and more on audio these days? I mean, especially with maybe it's the superhero movies that are coming out. It feels like audio is a bigger and bigger dimension. Is that hitting your industry more?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that as the visual aspect of entertainment was the sole focus for so long, we always had this sort of saying that nobody cares about sound, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was always the last, right? The last thing that anybody paid attention to. And now that we've elevated so far, we've gone so far with the visual aspects, it's only natural to be able to expand on the sound part of it, right? And now that studios can mix in multi-channel formats, there's speakers on the ceiling, there's speakers all around you. You move sound anywhere you want. And you can have that not just in the theater, but like on headphones.
Looking at your iPad, it's
right.
I think of it as akin to in the 90s when Matrix came out, and they had those shots where it kind of flew around, Neo, the bullet time shots they called it. And now you can do that with the audio as well, which is actually much more complicated if you think about the way sound propagates. And the fact that you guys can do this now, I think, is absolutely incredible. I've always thought that sound is such an important part of the interplay in the theater. A lot of people only recognize it when it's bad, but now I feel that paradigm has shifted. So many people have, the AirPod speakers. I can't remember the name of the Apple speakers. The
AirPods. Yeah,
AirPod speakers and stuff, which are actually pretty good drivers.
Yeah.
And they've recognized what good is. And now they're looking at us in an industry and, you guys providing this amazing capability to enjoy their content, because when it's not there, if it's just, me doing mono, they're going to know it. They're going to know it's bad.
And that just plays into, consumer expectations, right?
Mhm.
So you raise the bar on all other fronts, and then the expectation when you get on the airplane is that you have the same thing, right? So we need to continually evolve that landscape as well, right? There's other aspects I just want to touch on with spatial audio, which
Mm.
are really pretty fascinating. A lot of why you're seeing Apple move into this space is because of the convergence of augmented reality and virtual reality and how that is all going to play together. But the other part of it too is, there's some studies that have been out that have shown the health and wellness benefits of spatial audio. Um, you know, Reduced heart rate, reduced stress. These are things that are not even really perceived on a conscious level necessarily, but they happen. Why? Because maybe it's because we're used to listening to sound in a spatial format.
Mhm.
Like right now, we hear each other. You're there, I'm here. We hear everybody around us. We don't hear it just straight left, straight right from a headphone system. Maybe it's just more natural. We don't exactly know. But there's a lot of benefits even beyond the sonic part of it. I mean, in a nutshell, spatial audio allows you to hear sound and feel like you're really there. You can hear
Mm.
sound all around you, and we can listen like we're more naturally used to listening to sound.
Yeah, as you've evolved to this level, how far has processing had to come up to do this? I mean, I can't imagine this is something you could have done in the late 90s or the 2000s. It would have taken a supercomputer. Has the technology really made this available with digital capture techniques, or what's enabled this to happen?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. It's the processing power is finally there.
Hmm.
Um, so, yeah, in the late 90s, you could not do this because you didn't have the compute power available. And on the first mobile phones, there was nothing there,
Yeah.
right? It's just recently that we can actually process the actual spatial files themselves. Um, Previously, when the compute power was lower, you had to synthesize all the reflections and do all this stuff that sort of optimized the rendering aspect of it to run on a low powered system, right?
Hmm.
Which maybe brought to you an effect, but maybe it wasn't realistic enough. But now the sky's the limit. It's like we've got amazing compute power. We're barely tapping 1% of the CPU. You've got Android systems, and we can deploy directly on these systems, and we can do so much, right? We can do head tracking. We can tap into sensor data, and we can just leverage the power, available. So
Is there any particular content that highlights the spatial audio or techniques the best? Is it action movies? Is it music? Where does it really come to its forefront?
well, I think spatial audio is for everything. I
Hmm.
mean, everything, even down to mono. I mean, essentially, we're talking about externalization, right? So again, rather than hearing things right here, we can hear things out here in space, right? So if you have an action movie, um, that's a great example, right? Because you've got a lot of sound effects flying around, things whizzing around your
Yeah,
head,
yeah.
right? So
Tom Cruise in his fighter plane.
yeah, exactly. Helicopters over your head. So, rather than just having things right here, you're actually hearing them move. And so that's a great example. For music, we're all used to listening to music on speakers, right? So if
Hmm.
you imagine, having a larger soundscape, externalizing that sound, making it feel bigger and like you're in the middle of it. I mean, that's great. And gaming is fantastic too, because gaming, especially if you're controlling the game, situational awareness is a big deal, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
if you're moving your character around and you're hearing a sound effect or an object approach you, it's pretty helpful to hear precisely where that object is coming from um, for the gameplay. So.
How did spatial audio start? What created this requirement for the immersive audio experience?
Well, so spatial audio has long been adopted by the film industry, and really it started in the theater. I mean, and we would call it surround sound,
Hmm.
really, because you go in and you have this beautiful surround sound mix where audio moves all around you and above you. That then transferred into the home environment. And of course, you've seen surround sound systems. Back in the day, you'd have to get separate speakers. Now, a lot of the systems are sort of consolidated into sound bars and things like that, right? And then we got into headphones, right? And that path actually kind of went first through gaming, actually, for putting together, let's say, gaming headphones for PC gaming or console gaming. But then VR really kicked it off. Then deviated back to the fact, okay, well, what can we do with all of the surround content from film and in theater, that experience, right? We can also put that into headphones, right? And so that's where the whole experience came full circle, right? And it was packaged into a personal experience from your mobile phone.
And then naturally from there, the cabin is just the perfect place where everyone is almost mandatedly wearing headphones.
That's right. And you're now in an environment where you have a consumer expectation for higher quality immersive audio experiences, right? You have a captive audience. Everybody's wearing headphones. And the expectation is that the experience be the same. And the airline industry has always been great at providing very unique premium entertainment experiences, right? It's all about the early release film, right? Very carefully curated, right? So that the passenger is excited, right? And doesn't just revert to their typical programming, right? You're excited. You know that you're going to go on that flight and you're going to see that early release that might still be in the theater or just got out of the theater, but you don't have access to yet, or it's on pay-per-view, you had it on your list. And so that premium experience really deserves a premium audio experience, right? Because it only makes sense, right? That it should be premium across the board and meet the consumer expectation from what they get at home and on their personal device as well.
It's something that obviously we focus on, which is trying to get that premium home experience into the cabin. So, the audio being part of that is just a natural progression.
That's right. That's right.
Obviously, today, a lot of stuff in the airplane is based around headphones. You get on, some airlines will give out pretty low cost headphones. A lot of people are now bringing their own headphones. Where have you seen all that headphone technology? Has it come a long way? Is it still pretty much the same, but just with a Bluetooth transmitter built onto it? What have you guys seen when it comes to headphones?
Well, this is pretty interesting, right? Just historically, in terms of airlines, right? Coming from back in the days where, we used to use those pneumatic
headphones, yeah.
Right? It's like
love them.
sound tubes, right? And that was
hung below your neck.
Yeah. It kind of like a stethoscope, right? And so that was developed back, in the 60s, right? And used in the 60s and the 70s on airplanes. You'd plug in the tube into this hole, and it had
the armrest.
The armrest, and that's how you would hear. You could turn the volume up. It was a centralized, amplification system, and that's how they delivered sound. It was the first sort of cost-effective way to put together
distribute
audio over headphones, because to design and build a set of headphones back then was incredibly expensive. So it's not like anybody had them, and it's not like you could give them away for sure, right? Unfortunately, you had a price to pay. The fidelity wasn't not amazing. It was a solution, but it was not amazing, right?
You can probably tell what generation people come from if they had to use pneumatic headphones or not. I had to use them.
If they're using pneumatic headphones and watching 16 millimeter film, right? So, but then the Walkman came out in the late 70s, 1979, I believe, right? And I think that changed everything, right? Was not the Walkman itself, but it was the headphones that came with the Walkman. It was Sony's Sony created this mass produced low cost headphone, which it changed the game, because the idea around giving away headphones, it changed. Now you could actually, and even then, when I say low cost, I mean, yeah, they weren't very good, but they were still more expensive than they would be now, right? So, I mean, I believe that was a game changer though, because
Absolutely.
it was a business class offering. It was or a first class offering. You could finally have an electronic pair of headphones.
You could change channel. You could listen to the cockpit.
That's right.
I remember that. I rember one of my first flights listening to the
That's
cockpit
right.
chatter.
You had like 11 channels or something like that. You go through the So and then from there, it's like now that everybody's got their own personal devices, there's a lot of options, right? You've got Bluetooth, you've got wired, you still got the inexpensive headphones that they give you on the plane, which they are what they are. I mean, I guess they do the job if you don't have anything else, right?
If you're an AV nerd, you're not going to enjoy.
You're not going to enjoy it.
Yeah,
but
even the sound, the active sound cancellation ones, I find it pretty sketchy in comparison to if you have a really nice set of Bose headphones,
like a Bose Quiet Comfort or something like that. Yeah,
like Q-Suites. Yeah,
but the positive thing about adding software solutions like spatial audio to an in-flight entertainment system is that you can improve those lower cost versions, which is great because spatial audio works on any headphone. It doesn't require a specific headphone. At least HEAR360 solution does not. So, from a standpoint of, do I have to use these, these inexpensive free 25 centers? We can improve the experience on those, and it's going to sound a lot better than it did before. So that's a great thing. Or if you want to hook up your expensive Bluetooth headphones, please do and enjoy the ride. So
yeah, I have to say we put full cabin Bluetooth out, and we started looking at the data, and it came out at just the right amount of time because I believe it was Apple had removed the jack from the iPhone, and that was kind of a game changer. And everyone went out and started buying the $100 Bluetooth headphones.
Sure.
And the Apple ones were super popular. Bose, of course, very popular. Maybe JBL as well. There was quite a few out there that really, made a difference. But having those software codecs on top creates just so much more value for the experience. We have, this 4K video. It looks fantastic. And now with the audio on top, it's game changing.
Yeah, and the audio improvements long overdue for IFE, right? It's just it's their special, and for a good reason. I mean, there's special pipelines for content delivery. They're different than the rest of the industry's content delivery methods. You've got a certain workflow that maybe nobody wanted to touch. The one great thing about adding, spatial audio into this equation and the way that we're doing it is that you don't really have to change your content delivery method, right? You don't have to increase costs for the delivery. At the same time, we can add in, a lot of future proofing as well, because we can accept multi-channel inputs as well. We can accept 12-channel audio.
Director's commentary, maybe.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. So it's open for whatever the industry decides to do. Down the line, right?
Yeah, that was very cool. When probably DVDs. When was that? Maybe 2000. When you started getting extra tracks, director's commentary, etc. Maybe different audio tracks, different languages.
What would you say the percentage of wired versus Bluetooth use is on a new airplane?
That's a good question. Still predominantly wired, I think. Bluetooth acceptance is going up substantially. A lot more people have their own headphones, and they want to use their own headphones as well. If they get provided with wired headphones, they tend to be on the cheaper end of the scale. Some airlines will spend more, some won't. But if people bringing headphones on board, you still see a few people bringing wired headphones on board. They might bring the Bose QCs on there, because if they've spent $100, $200 on headphones, they're going to want to get some use out of them. But we are seeing that uptick in the Bluetooth headphones coming on for sure, and it's clearly going to be part of the future. I can't see any of the cellular phone manufacturers putting a jack back onto the phone. It's become the expectation, just like great audio has become the expectation for home theater, and you're absolutely right, it has. If you get a cheap TV, you can hear it immediately before you can see it half the time.
Sure.
I think the expectation for Bluetooth is there to stay because people have invested in these headphones. Now they fall out, they fall into the seat sometimes. I've seen people stressed about that, so that's a problem that needs solving. But on that, can you see a future without headphones? I mean, we've seen technology in the cabin talking about headphoneless audio. It's kind of a nirvana state of where some people are trying to get to. What are the challenges around that? How does sound work in the cabin?
So there's a couple reasons why a headphone-less system would be great, right? One is like fatigue, right? It would be great if we didn't have to wear over-the-ear headphones on top of our ears for the entire trip. We get tired, we get hot. But at the same time, we want to like reduce the noise, right? Because we have the noise floor of the actual airplane flying and the jet engines outside, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so when you take the headphones off, you got that involved, right? But there are some interesting audio technologies. We're working on some stuff too. It's in the R&D phase, right? But the idea that you can create these focused spotlight-like arrays, where we can focus with ultrasonic tech, or there's a couple different methods for this, arrays of audio or beams of audio that go directly to your ears, where you're the only one that can hear the sound, nobody else can hear the sound, right? That's the holy grail. The issue is there's a couple challenges here. There's fidelity, right? There's weight, because if we have to build, speaker arrays that are, heavy,
especially in an airplane that's trying to be light.
In an airplane, everybody's always looking at the weight, the added weight. There's calibration, right? Like when you have seats, reclining seats, moving. But the great thing is that we have all sorts of new sensors, right? We can take use of cameras and sensors and facial recognition. So we can do lots of interesting things in terms of calibrating algorithms to focus beams, right? And now you're getting into a stage 2 where you're saying, well, how do we apply the noise cancellation? Well, the idea is that you're going to have to add in microphone systems as well. But the goal is to be able to place them in places where you can actually accomplish that goal along with the beam sound. So anyway, this is the holy grail, because if I can get in the seat and I don't have to put anything on my head, I have a personal experience. I don't hear anybody else's sound. They don't hear my sound, right? And it sounds like I'm sitting in my living room at home. Now that would be pretty fantastic, right?
It would be pretty incredible. I have to say, the sheer challenge of doing it to 200, 300 passengers, different shapes, sizes.
That's right.
Different seats, and then different acoustic features around every seat. I mean, it almost feels like you'd have to do it to each and every seat.
Yeah, there's a lot of work that would be involved in terms of, and I think that's why any system would have to have flexibility in its own learning component, things like that, so that it can self-calibrate. So that's why this is still marked as the holy grail, because we're a little far away from it. But conceptually, the tools and the tech is there. It's about putting it together in the right way, right? And I think it's totally achievable. Like I said,
Will we see it on the ground before we see it in the air?
Possibly. I mean, I think, you're seeing some of those things on the ground in terms of sound bars. We're not seeing it implemented like that, but there are some systems, ultrasonic systems that are out there that are designed for, let's say, very specific use cases like museums, personal
galleries,
galleries, personal experiences, autonomous vehicles, right? That would be another great use case for this type of technology. Because when you get into autonomous vehicles, you're talking about ride sharing, right? And you're talking about personal zones, right, for individuals. So I think there's a lot of places, there's many places you can go with this.
I can listen to my audiobook in the front, and the kids can listen to Harry Potter in the back, and we can both be happy.
And nobody's bothered by each other. yeah, that's right. Or you can hop in, the autonomous Uber with 3 other people and just do your own thing.
Be in your own private space and a shared space.
That's
Absolutely.
right.
What's next for HEAR360? Where are you guys going next?
So, right now we're working on a few different things. We're working on a lot of this great IFE integration with you guys, which is amazing. We're working on headphone integration. There's a product right now we're integrating. We're super excited about. This is another conversation about compute power. This is a very high-end headphone, but it's got the equivalent of a cell phone inside of it, and the sensors that live in there are just go beyond anything out there right now. So we're actually putting together a spatial audio package for that headphone system. We're also working on integration with OEMs for cell phones directly as well. So I think the landscape is open. People are aware of spatial audio now. All right, and the compute power is going up exponentially. So the number of places where we can go into has just increased exponentially. So
excellent. So last question, 25 years you started ago. Do you still get cold shivers when you see people not coiling a mic cable properly?
Yes, because we learned very specifically how to coil a mic cable, and as an assistant in a studio, we had to break down all the sessions and we had to set them all up as well. So if you were pulling out cables that were all knotted up
around the elbow,
it was the worst thing. It was the worst thing in the world, especially when you're under a lot of time pressure as well, to get set up. So
I say, God bless the multi-core when that came out. That made my drum kit so much better. So Matt, thanks so much for being here. Where else can people learn about HEAR360?
Sure. If you go to hear360.io, you can check out all the different services and technologies we offer.
Matt, thank you so much. You've been listening to the Beyond Entertainment podcast. Please like, follow, and subscribe wherever you consume your podcast. And we look forward to talking to you in the next exciting podcast.